Before I do actually start this video, I need to preface this by actually saying that I am in no way saying that season 2 is actually a bad season. I think season 2 is actually alright. Like, if I could give it a rating out of 10, I would probably give it a 7.5. However, I do believe that it has shown a bit of a decline from just how good it was in season 1. Mainly because I believe season 1 was a very strong season for the show. But also because there's a few things that were actually wrong with season 2, which I'm going to actually talk about in this video. Not all the characters were actually terrible, but I do believe that the main ones, as in the ones that are supposed to be the best characters, your Alicent, your Rhaenyras, your Daemons, have drastically dropped in terms of how good they were in season 1 compared to season 2. With Daemon, there wasn't really much written about him in terms of what he was actually doing at Harrenhal, but when they actually went with Daemon going through a bunch of nightmares, I think that's kind of a good thing, but they went overboard with it, as in they did it way too much and it became a bore like very quickly. This boredom just turned into a straight up annoyance, because really and truly this scene should only be shown like 2 or 3 times. I think the only ones that should be there is Daemon's scenes with Viserys and with Rhaenyra. Those are the only 2 that Daemon should have in terms of his nightmares at Harrenhal, in terms of him actually being given great character development. Other than that, everything else was not necessary. The stuff with his mother was 100% not necessary. Like, it was just disgusting to watch. Yes, I know the show does show some incest stuff, but mother and son was weird. I don't understand why it was even added to the show, really and truly. It was very unnecessary and it was just uncomfortable to watch. With Rhaenyra, the whole Rhaenyra doesn't want war in season 2 was kind of overdone a bit. Like, her characterization has drastically dropped from season 1 to season 2. I believe that in season 1, she was well written, but in season 2, they were just heavily focused on her not actually wanting war, which kind of made the whole final scene of season 1 redundant a bit, because Rhaenyra's reaction to Luke's death should have just kickstarted Rhaenyra's rage in terms of her actually wanting her throne. Although yes, I do understand why she doesn't want war, but due to the fact that a lot of characters around her, specifically characters that are close to her, are actually dying around her, like Luke and Rhaenys, I don't understand why she's not doing anything or even attempting to do anything. She's trying to stop a war that's already been in full motion and people had already died because of it. Alicent is even worse because her character, oh my god, she was butchered in season 2. Like, Alicent letting Rhaenyra just invade King's Landing and just open the gates to her, and then knowing full well that she would have to kill Aegon in front of everyone, especially after it came direct out of Rhaenyra's mouth, and she still decided to do it, makes no sense to me. Aemon also kind of got done a little bit dirty, because like, they made the majority of his reasoning to actually do things in season 2 because he was bullied, which is kind of weird to me, which kind of dumbs down Aemon's character a bit, because I expected Aemon to be a complete menace and just doing things just because he's loyal to his brother. But making a lot of stuff that Aemon does because he was bullied as a kid just kind of dumbs down his character a little bit. But I do think that Aemon is still one of the best written characters in season 2. However, also, this does not mean that I believe that all of the Centerpiece characters were terribly written. I still believe that they were still quite good in terms of story-wise. Well, most of them are. However, I do think that the certain additions to their characterization kind of made them a lot worse than what they actually were in season 1. To the point in which most people don't even watch House of Dragons for them. Like, they stop being the Centerpiece characters. Like, the moment that they show up, you just don't care, really and truly. As the main Centerpiece characters declined a bit in terms of writing, the secondary characters like your Aegon, your Kristen Coles, your Aemon were actually pushed up in terms of how good they actually were. Aemon and Aegon more so because they basically carried season 2, and Kristen Cole improved in terms of his characterization from season 1, at least the second part of season 1. Although yes, I don't think he's still a great written character compared to the others, but I still believe that he improved. And they weren't even the only ones. Rhaenys was also great, so was Jace, so was Baelor. I don't really care much about Rhaenyra. I think even Hugh Hammer was also a great written character in season 2. Like, a lot of these characters, when they actually show up, you actually are invested to what they're actually going to be doing or what they're actually going to be saying. But in terms of the centerpiece characters like your Rhaenyras, your Daemons, your Alicent, you don't really care that much. The second thing that a lot of people tend to point out about season 2 is its pacing, which me personally, I don't really have a problem with the pacing because I actually think it's an upgrade from season 1 in terms of how it actually allows them to actually flesh out other characters other than the centerpiece characters. For example, season 2 fleshed out Jace, Baelor, Aemon, Aegon, and so on. Like, in season 1, that would have never happened because if you're on a centerpiece character, you basically just there, like you just exist, but there really isn't much about your character that we as an audience actually know. For example, Rhaenyra. What exactly do you know about Rhaenyra? Not much. Rhaenyra, there isn't much I know about Rhaenyra. Like, a lot of background characters or the non-centerpiece characters don't really get fleshed out at all in season 1, mainly because season 1 was really fast-paced, as in it was like 100 miles per hour. And if you're on a centerpiece character, and especially if you have to die in season 1, then you wouldn't really have much going for your character in terms of character development or character growth or character understanding or whatnot. However, I'm not going to say that the pacing was just perfect all the way through, as in it was done perfectly. Mainly, like I said earlier on, there were scenes that were certainly not necessary to be actually added in. For example, most of the stuff with Daemon wasn't necessary. Yes, I understand they were trying to give us a big payoff at the end of the season, but I don't think they should have actually had Daemon's illusions that he just tend to have when he was at Harrenhal. I don't think that should have lasted for an entire season because eventually it got old very quickly. This is also not just a Daemon problem. Like I said earlier on, stuff with Alicent as well was not entirely necessary. For example, her diving into a river. Yes, I understand they were trying to go for symbolism, but really and truly, it really slowed down the pace of the episode. Like, the moment that she showed up, I know a lot of people were immediately just turned off. Like, it just got to the point in which a lot of people just stopped caring about Alicent, which is insane because she's supposed to be a centerpiece character. This is easily the biggest reason as to why a lot of people actually pissed off at season 2, because a lot of people expect some events to actually happen, but it didn't. Like, the only big thing that actually happened in season 2 that was taken from the source material that a lot of people were actually expecting to happen was the battle at Rook's Rest, which is easily by far the best episode in the show so far, by a mile. Other than that, it was mostly just character work. Like, they was mostly trying to flesh out more characters, which is fine. However, I do believe that certain stuff should have been removed, and I think certain things from the book should have actually happened in season 2. This is mainly because after you finish season 2, it genuinely feels like you just watched a whole season's worth of filler arc. Yes, I understand it was doing character work. Yes, I understand the comparison to the early season of Game of Thrones, which also heavily focused on character work and didn't really have much events happening. However, the early season of Game of Thrones, almost every scene that you watch in the show, you are glued to the screen. Every scene is engaging to the max in the early seasons. Like, there is not a single scene in which you just genuinely don't care, which happened a couple of times in House of the Dragon season 2. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of great scenes in season 2, as in great dialogue being done, but a lot of time there were some that were very unnecessary, or I just genuinely just don't care about it. Which is vastly different with Game of Thrones, because there is no way I can watch a Game of Thrones scene in the early season, as in the first 4 seasons, in which I show no emotion towards a scene. This should be actually the reason that a lot of people should actually bring up, because a lot of people just talk about, oh, season 2 is slow, or season 2 have bad character writing. But in my opinion, this is probably the biggest reason as to why I genuinely had a problem with season 2. This is the reason why I actually wanted more events to actually take place in season 2, because due to the fact that a lot of stuff that's supposed to happen haven't actually happened yet, it means that season 3 is going to be crammed, like really crammed, because there is a lot of stuff that haven't happened yet, like character deaths, battles, a lot of stuff that haven't actually happened yet, which is why I genuinely believe that there was some stuff that shouldn't actually be happening in season 3 but should be happening in season 2 to actually take off some of the pacing problem that's going to happen in season 3, because season 3 is going to be really high paced. For example, the Battle of the Gauntlet should have happened in season 2. The capture of King's Landing should have happened in season 2. I think that should have ended season 2. Season 3 has to end with the you-know-what scene between Rhaenyra and Aegon. Like, there is no other way to go around it. That has to be the ending of season 3. That means that all of the stuff that hasn't happened yet, that's supposed to happen before the stuff between Rhaenyra and Aegon, all of that still has to happen, as in the battles, the deaths, the sieges, everything has to happen. And I think they're going to have to either merge a lot of stuff, or they have to outright remove battles or remove events entirely. I am almost certain that season 3 is going to be a great season. I'm just scared that they're going to actually have to cram a lot of stuff and remove a lot of stuff. But I understand why they made season 2 the way that they actually did, because they're going to have to kill off a lot of characters in season 3, and I understand why they actually want to give them a bit of character depth so that you actually feel something when they actually die. Which is what happened with season 1, because I'm very certain not a lot of people really cared that much that Rhaenyra died, because really and truly, you didn't really get much correlation with her. Like, you didn't get character depth from her. Like, we don't get much time with her. She just kind of showed up, then she aged, then she died. So yeah, I understand why they did season 2 the way that they actually did it. Although yes, I still believe that some events should actually be sprinkled into season 2 so that they actually get to implement all of the events that actually happen in the Dance of Dragons. But I understand why they didn't do that. I do believe that the backlash for the show, as in season 2, is just doesn't make much sense to me, because a lot of people tend to do the most stupidest comparison, saying that season 2 of House of Dragon is just as bad as season 8 of Game of Thrones. Like, a lot of people have forgotten just how bad season 8 was. No, it has not reached the catastrophic level of Game of Thrones season 8. I think it's still better than season 7. If I actually would give it a ranking in terms of Game of Thrones season wise, I would say House of Dragon season 2 would be in and around Game of Thrones season 5. Not the best of seasons, had some bad spots, but not entirely awful. Definitely not as bad as them fandom is claiming it is. But anyways, let me know what you think about this in the comments below, and as always, like and subscribe.